Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with some DFS picks for week 5. What we've decided to do this week is switch up the format a little bit. We want to give you guys more information on the background of why we're making some of these selections to try to help you be able to make some of these kind of selections on your own. In order to do that, I'm going to go with a slideshow today that kind of breaks down the reasoning behind some of the guys I'm looking for that you guys will be able to look through yourselves and kind of understand the reasoning behind some of the picks that we make here. So let me call that up right now, and then we can get started. The first thing I want to talk about today is why you should start Justin Forsett and others. There's 5 guys on this list that I think are people who you should be looking at in DFS this week, on DraftKings especially. Justin Forsett is the first one at 5,800. Owen Daniels is the second at 2,700. Julio Jones is the guy we're going to be spending up for this week at 9,200. Keenan Allen is another solid option at wide receiver at 7,200. And Doug Martin is a cheap running back option that we really like for this week. So let's go over some of the reasons why. The first guy we're going to talk about today is going to be Owen Daniels at 2,700. He plays against Oakland's defense. Oakland has been allowing huge numbers to the tight ends lately. You had Crockett Gilmore, Gary Barnidge, Martellus Bennett last week. All of them have put up really big numbers against them. It looks like Oakland's going to be a team that we can target tight ends against all season long, and Owen Daniels is the next man up in that list. Daniels has scored a TD in 2 straight games and has had a red zone look in 3 out of 4 games already this season. He averages over 5 targets per game, which isn't a ton, but again, he's only 2,700, probably only needs to get you about 10 points. If he has 2 catches for 20 yards and does wind up in the end zone today, that's going to be more than enough to return value for you. And anything he does above and beyond that, which, again, we've seen some big 2-touchdown games and some big games with a lot of catches out of a lot of these guys, that would be something else that you would want to look at because he would give you some upside while allowing you to fit in some of the studs that you want in order to really give your roster a lot of upside. The next guy we're going to talk about is Julio Jones. Julio Jones is one of those studs that you might want to try to fit in if you do happen to use a guy along the lines of an Owen Daniels, who we just talked about. He plays in the second highest total game this week against a weak Redskins pass defense. This Redskins pass defense has been bad for a long time. I know the numbers don't show them as being horrendous this year, but they have played against some bad teams, and they have played in some bad weather games that wound up being pretty low scoring. So the numbers are a little bit skewed. We do know that the Redskins pass defense was one of the worst last year. They allowed some really big games to quarterbacks, some really big games to wide receivers. And Julio Jones is, quite frankly, the best wide receiver in football right now. Averaging 13 targets per game so far in 2015. He's averaged 9.5 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown per game. And he disappointed last week, but they were up 28-0 early, so they really didn't need him to do a whole bunch. I think the game this week will be a little bit closer, at least in the first half especially. And I think that'll mean that we'll see more of those targets going Julio's way as we usually do. The next guy I want to talk about is Keenan Allen at 7,200. There's no Stevie Johnson likely this week as he got hurt and left after last week's game. With that being said, you're going to see a lot of Keenan Allen here. He's going up against a weak Pittsburgh secondary, averaging about 11.5 targets per game. He's averaging 8 catches, 96 yards, and has scored touchdowns in 3. He has 3 touchdowns in 4 games so far this year, for an average fantasy score of 23.7 points per game. At a price of only $7,200, that's going to be an average return of over 3 times his cost per $1,000. And if you can get a guy who's going to give you those kind of numbers, he's going to be cash game safe, help you get up to 150 or higher. And again, he does have the upside now with Stevie Johnson out. He could see another one of those 12 to 18 target games that we've already seen him have at least twice this year. And I think this could be a good spot for him to see a third one. At 7,200, I think there's a lot of upside with Keenan Allen and a lot of safety with the number of targets that he sees. So I think he's a good bet to pay off value for you. Another one of the running backs I want to talk about is Doug Martin. At 4,700, he's a really good bet this week. He's at home. He's in a game where he's favored by 3, and he's averaging about 18 touches per game, which was something that was surprising to me when I saw it. He plays a Jags team that's 6th worst in points allowed so far this season, so you got to figure there's going to be some touchdowns here. And the thing I really like about Doug Martin is he's what we call an every down back. On 3rd down, he gets catches. 1st and 2nd down, he gets carries. And if they wind up in the red zone, he's also going to be somebody who gets goal line touches as well. So he basically clicks off all the boxes of what we like to look for here when we look for a guy that we want to use for daily fantasy. The one other guy who we didn't talk about yet is going to be Justin Forsett, who I'm going to call up right now so you guys can see the slide we have on him. Forsett is 5,800 this week. He too is at home. He's favored by 7, so he'll likely be running late. One thing I want everybody to understand that I think we've kind of gotten away from is that we want to teach you guys some of the tricks that we use when we're picking out our players. Now, you might look at Justin Forsett this week and think he's not going to be a great play, but there are certain things that he has in his favor that always click guys up when we're looking at him for daily fantasy. When you have a running back who's playing at home on a team that's favored, that's one of the best situations you can find for daily fantasy. Those are usually the guys that wind up with multiple touchdowns, and they usually wind up having much bigger days than you would expect for them based on their price. So guys like Forsett and even Doug Martin today are both in that situation, favored and at home, where they could be in a good situation to have a big upside game by either running the clock out late or maybe picking up a touchdown in the red zone or a touchdown or two late in the red zone. Forsett plays against that Cleveland run defense that's ranked second last in the league. They've already given up big games to guys like, Latavius Murray and Chris Ivory. Basically, we've come to realize that the Cleveland run defense is something that you can exploit anytime you're an opposing team with a decent running game. The Ravens do have a pretty good running game. Forsett had a huge week last week, and this is a guy that's averaging over 20 touches a game, whether that is, him picking up 20 or 25 carries in a close game, or whether it be a game where they're trailing and he gets 14 or 15 carries and winds up getting 3 or 4 passes out of the backfield. The one drawback with Forsett is he is still losing some of that goal line work to a guy like Lorenzo Taliaferro, but he also did have some carries inside the red zone as well last week, meaning that, they're still giving him some chances to score a touchdown, although in the short yardage work, you're probably going to see a guy like Taliaferro. At only 5,800 in a good matchup here, like clicking off a lot of the boxes, Justin Forsett is definitely somebody who we would be looking at to have a big day today, and somebody who I think you should look at in all your fantasy rosters. So that pretty much sums it up for some of the guys that we're looking at here in daily fantasy today for DraftKings Week 5. As always, make sure you get over to the RotoCurve site and sign up for an account if you don't have one already. You can start earning your curve points, which you can trade in for tickets to games or some swag that we have on the site, even some money for you to play on your favorite daily fantasy sites. So there's a lot of upside to being an RC member. Plus, we have a couple free rolls this week that are only open to the members of the RC community, and it's a good chance for you to get a couple extra bucks that way as well to help build your bankroll. Thank you guys for joining us here at RotoCurve. Once again, my name is Benny Ricciardi, and as always, stay classy, DFS.